My name is Rebecca Smith, and I'm 32 years old. I married my husband, Michael, 3 years ago in the spring, and our relationship has been wonderful. We're also very close to Michael's sister, Emily. She feels more like a sister to me than just a sister-in-law. This story is about Daniel, the man who later became Emily's husband. Michael and I had been together for over a decade before getting married, so we had always been like second parents to Emily. We'd always wished for her happiness and done everything we could to care for her. That's why, when Emily got engaged, she wanted to introduce her fiancé to us, her second parents. "I'd love for you both to meet my fiancé," she told us. It was a significant moment for Michael and me. We were overjoyed that Emily, someone we loved like a daughter, had found a partner and was building a future together. Our hearts were full of happiness for her. The day finally arrived. Emily brought Daniel, the man she had chosen to spend her life with, to meet us. He seemed to be around my age, maybe 32. He was 5 years older than Emily, which made me realize she preferred older men. I quietly observed him, noticing his solid build and calm demeanor. But what caught my attention was how often Daniel kept glancing at me. I couldn't help but wonder, was he trying to say something? Did I somehow make him uncomfortable? Or was it just a coincidence? I checked my outfit and hair for any issues but didn't see anything out of place. Realizing perhaps his staring was impolite, Daniel quickly looked away. Even though we couldn't quite understand why he was watching me so intently, Michael and I decided not to dwell on it. We moved on to introduce ourselves and started chatting with Emily and Daniel, who were sitting across from us. "Take good care of my little sister," Michael said with a warm smile, to which Daniel replied, "I will, sir." With that, Michael entrusted Emily's happiness to Daniel, creating a sense of warmth and ease at the table. The initial tension of the first meeting seemed to fade. At one point, Michael asked Daniel, "So, Daniel, what do you do for a living?" I was curious about his answer and listened closely. Daniel responded with pride, puffing out his chest as he spoke. "You might have heard of it," Daniel began. "I work at TE Company, which is growing rapidly right now." "TE Company? Is that the famous game development company?" Michael asked, his eyebrows raised. "Yes, exactly. I actually started last year, but it wasn't because I didn't like my old job. TE Company approached me directly because they really valued my skills. So, it was more like a promotion. Don't worry, I didn't start as just an entry-level employee." Michael and I exchanged surprised looks, unable to hide our shock. Daniel seemed pleased by our reaction and puffed up with pride as he continued. "That's why I want you to trust me completely with Emily. I'm advancing quickly at TE Company, and I'm confident I'm progressing faster than most. Even though I started at a regular level, my salary is already on the rise, and I'll be moving up the ranks in no time. So, you don't need to worry." I was too stunned to speak. TE Company is incredibly well known, and I knew a lot about it. Michael probably did too, though perhaps not all the details. Since he didn't work in the industry, it was clear to both of us that Daniel had quickly advanced in a company with a reputation for success, but neither of us expected him to climb so fast. Despite some unease about parts of his story, I decided to trust him. After all, he had been headhunted by TE Company and seemed genuinely confident about his career trajectory. As the conversation shifted to lighter topics, I became curious about how Daniel and Emily had met. They explained that a mutual friend had introduced them. Daniel wasn't looking to date through matchmaking events, and Emily wasn't actively seeking a boyfriend either. But when their friend suggested they meet, they decided to give it a shot. "I really like how Daniel always makes me smile," Emily said, her eyes lighting up. "His clumsiness is kind of cute, too." It was sweet hearing them talk about each other. Their affection was clear, and their bond was palpable even without any sugary treats to go with it. but something lingered in my mind. As Daniel and Emily were preparing to leave, they chatted about bringing gifts and rice. While they were preoccupied with that, Daniel came over to me and asked in a somewhat puzzled tone, "Hey, do you maybe not remember me?" I was taken aback, tilting my head in confusion. "Do you really not remember me?" he repeated, his voice laced with doubt. He was certainly handsome, but I couldn't place him. I searched my memory, trying to recall any close friend named Daniel, but nothing came to mind. Seeing me struggle, Daniel sighed in apparent disappointment. "Well, let's exchange contact info," he suggested, "and please let Michael know later. I forgot to exchange contacts with him." I was taken aback by Daniel's sudden informal tone. Even if we had known each other in the past, his familiarity felt inappropriate. I couldn't recall ever being close with someone who would speak to me this way. My mind swirled with questions. Who is he? What kind of relationship did we have? But with Emily present, it didn't seem like the right time to delve into these matters. So, I stayed silent, forcing a polite smile. After we exchanged contact information, I planned to text Daniel to clarify things. Before I could, he messaged me first. "I'm surprised the girl who used to sit quietly in the corner of the classroom in elementary school is married now. Your face hasn't changed much. I recognized you right away." His words threw me off. I had all but buried my memories of elementary school. Back then, I had been teased by classmates, and those years were painful ones I preferred not to revisit. Eventually, my family moved to a new city, leaving those bad memories behind. It was there that I met Michael, who became my closest friend and, later, my husband. Trying to keep things civil and professional, I replied, "What do you mean?" to avoid any potential misunderstandings. I informed Daniel that Michael would be included in any exchanges we had in the future. I didn't elaborate on my reasons or my past, preferring to keep those memories to myself. Daniel replied with a seemingly casual question. "Do you remember being called PU Girl in elementary school?" My heart sank at the mention of that nickname. It had been a cruel label assigned to me by classmates. The PU stood for poor, a baseless assumption because I came from a single-parent household. My mom, though financially stable, had become the target of nasty gossip among other parents, and that rumor filtered down to their children. The nickname had followed me relentlessly until my mom decided we needed a fresh start. We moved, cutting ties with the environment that had caused us so much grief. Hearing it now, after all these years, stirred a mix of anger and sadness within me. I calmly replied, "Please watch what you say. You're my sister-in-law's fiancé. And that's all. Let's keep this respectful." Daniel seemed to take the hint, as he didn't message me again, but his words lingered, and Michael noticed my unease. His expression darkened as he pieced together what had happened. "What's wrong with that guy?" Michael snapped. "He's about to marry Emily, and he thinks it's okay to bring up things like that? It's insane." I tried to calm him. "Let's not jump to conclusions just yet," I said, though I felt the same unease. Still, something didn't sit right with me. I decided to investigate further. That night, I called my mom and asked her to dig out any old class photos from my elementary school days. A little later, she called back, her tone serious. "There's a boy named Daniel in the photo," she said, "and if I'm not mistaken, wasn't he the one who bullied you the most?" As soon as she said it, the memories came flooding back. Daniel had indeed been my primary tormentor. He looked so different now, slimmer and more confident, that I hadn't recognized him. But there was no mistaking it. This was the same person. To confirm, I asked my mom to send me the photo. Looking at it, I could hardly believe that Emily's fiancé was the boy who had made my childhood so miserable. A few months later, Emily reached out, catching me off guard. "Rebecca," she said warmly, "we haven't gotten your RSVP for the wedding yet. "Are you and Michael planning to come?" Her question hung in the air, and my mind raced. How could I face Daniel at the wedding, knowing who he truly was? What wedding invitation? We were really looking forward to it, but we never received one. I told Emily. She sounded genuinely surprised. "I definitely sent it. Maybe it got lost. I'll bring it over to you tomorrow," she said with sincerity. The next day, Emily personally delivered the invitation to us, and we confirmed that we would be attending. At that point, we had no idea what would unfold at the wedding, or how it would affect us. No one could have predicted what was about to happen. On the day of the wedding, Emily looked absolutely breathtaking in her pure white dress. She looked like an angel. I couldn't help but tear up as I congratulated her, wishing her a lifetime of happiness, hoping that our happiness would continue as well. But then, Daniel, the groom, quickly shattered the moment. He pointed at me, surprising everyone. "What are you doing here? I didn't invite you," he said with a frown, his displeasure clear. It was as if Daniel had deliberately made sure that Michael and I were left out of the guest list. He continued, making accusations that left us all stunned. "This woman grew up with just her mom. When things got tough, she ran away. She probably had money problems, and now she's with some rich guy thinking life will be easy. She's living in a dream," he said, completely misjudging me and making assumptions about my life he knew nothing about. Michael, sitting beside me, clenched his fists in anger, but I whispered for him to stay calm. But Daniel didn't stop. He pressed on, throwing more false accusations. "I work for a prestigious company. Are you planning to use your connection as my sister-in-law to get money from me if I marry Emily?" he demanded, sounding sure of himself. His friends, standing around, seemed to feed off his narrow-minded views and began to murmur in agreement, shocked by his words. I stood up, walked over to a staff member, and asked to borrow the microphone. Daniel looked at me, probably expecting me to make some emotional or irrational response, but I stayed composed and said, calmly, "It's absurd that someone who can't even remember the face of his own company's president calls himself an elite. Think carefully. If you want to sever ties with me, I'll be in the president's office tomorrow. We'll handle it through HR procedures." I handed the microphone back to the staff, leaving Daniel speechless and visibly stunned. I returned to my seat with calm confidence, my demeanor steady. Michael, however, stood up and began heading toward the exit, followed shortly by Emily. Daniel, seeing them leave, called out, "Wait, why are you leaving too? I'm just trying to end things with her. If that's the case, there shouldn't be any problems, right?" His confusion was clear as he spoke to Emily, but she responded with a cold, cutting look. "You really don't know Rebecca, do you?" she said, her voice firm. "She's the CEO of Tea Company. I respect and deeply admire her. I can't forgive you for insulting her. I'm ending this engagement right now. You've ruined such an important day, be prepared." Daniel froze, clearly shocked by Emily's decisive words. She immediately began speaking to the venue staff, quickly removing her wedding dress. She informed the guests that the banquet was over and that the wedding would now be a simple meal gathering. With authority, she made it clear that this situation would never be repeated and pointed the blame squarely at Daniel for the breakup. The following day, as promised, I waited calmly for Daniel in the president's office. Two large, muscular employees stood by my side, prepared for anything if things took a turn. When Daniel entered, he initially seemed confident, but that quickly evaporated as he took a seat, clearly uneasy. His behavior, walking in without permission, failing to greet anyone, was rude and unprofessional. It was obvious he didn't understand the basic protocols of the company. "No way. I can't believe you're really the president. This is unbelievable," he said, incredulous. If you'd done any research, you'd have found the president's information on our website. Didn't you check before coming? I asked, maintaining my composure. Well, there were some things, he mumbled, trailing off. It became clear he hadn't taken me seriously or bothered to verify the facts. Perhaps he thought I was joking or exaggerating in front of all those guests. I remained calm, leaning forward slightly. I'm considering terminating your contract. What? You can't make such a quick decision over a small misunderstanding. I'll talk to the Labor Standards Inspection Office, he said, trying to negotiate. I slid a copy of his resume across the table toward him. You lied about your education here, didn't you? And you claimed to have skills you don't actually possess, like Excel and video editing. Is that true? Well, about that, he started, his voice faltering as he realized he had been caught. Falsifying information and submitting false reports are grounds for termination, I told him without hesitation. He looked taken aback by my blunt response. In fact, I had felt something off about him from the start. After our initial meeting, I decided to look into his background thoroughly. Normally, our company doesn't rely on headhunters, and even when we do, I personally interview all recommended candidates. Yet, I couldn't recall having any in-depth conversation with Daniel. He had joined through our regular hiring process. Starting as a basic employee, he had claimed he was eager for promotion and that he was proficient in certain software. But in reality, he wasn't. That was why he'd never been promoted. His self-assessment was inflated, and I found his overconfidence suspicious. Upon further observation, his work ethic was lackluster, and he seemed content to coast along without any real ambition. I had tried to help him improve, but nothing changed. Now that his engagement with Emily had ended, there was nothing keeping him around. His behavior had become increasingly unpleasant, making me uncomfortable. There was no reason to be lenient with him anymore. I swiftly instructed him to leave the company. Since his tenure had been less than 6 months, there was no need to consider severance pay or arrange for a formal handover of duties. Can't you help me out as an old friend? He pleaded. I coldly responded, I don't see any reason to continue our relationship, and arranged for other staff to handle his immediate departure. It seemed he was hoping his father would bail him out financially, but given the outrageous rumors he'd spread, that support never came. There had been a previous incident where my mother had sued Daniel's mother for defamation, and my father had paid compensation for damages. But this time, it seemed my father had reached his limit. He cut ties with Daniel completely, refusing to help him again. Afterward, Daniel took on the responsibility of caring for his elderly mother while continuing to face demands for compensation. Eventually, he disappeared, reportedly taken away by a group of people dressed in all black, and no one has seen or heard from him since. Someone may come forward with information eventually, but I have no intention of actively searching for him. Emily was devastated when she first discovered the truth about Daniel's past, but with time, she's come to see the situation differently. It's been about 6 months now, and she's started to view it as a blessing in disguise, saying, "It's probably best we didn't get married." Her smile has returned, and she's even started looking for a new partner. Seeing her happier has been a relief for both Michael and me. They've even started talking about having children now.